Have you ever known someone who tries incredibly hard to make friends? Like they go totally out of their way, they constantly put themselves out there, but they just fail miserably? It's a total mystery, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look at the fundamental mechanics of human connection. We'll see if we can figure out exactly why sheer social effort just isn't always enough to build lasting relationships. So let's dive into a real-life case study to figure this out. Meet Stacy. Now, Stacy actually did everything quote-unquote right, according to the baseline math of making friends. She went out, she partied, she constantly put herself in close proximity to others, and she did it with high frequency. She truly put in the effort. But her results? Zero loyal friends. In fact, she somehow ended up making enemies. Which brings us to a really massive question. Why did Stacy's perfect social effort create enemies instead of friends? And this wasn't just a brief slump or a run of bad luck for her. Stacy had absolutely zero childhood friends. She didn't have high school buddies, and even her coworkers rarely asked her to hang out. She always felt like people just wouldn't stay loyal to her. So what was she missing? What causes this massive, super frustrating gap between putting in high social effort and getting terrible social results? Well, it actually all comes down to a foundational concept called the golden rule of friendship. The definition is incredibly straightforward, but when you really think about it, its impact is absolute. Here it is. If you want people to like you, you must make them feel good. And if you make them feel bad, they will avoid you. I mean, it sounds so simple, almost like common sense, right? But as we're about to see through Stacy's experience, there are just so many ways people completely accidentally break this rule every single day without even realizing it. So how exactly was Stacy breaking this rule? It started with her first major error, which was bad body language. The source material notes that Stacy had this perpetual, subtle frown combined with these glazed-over eyes, and it was just plastered on her face 24/7. Now look, she might not have actually been angry or sad, that literally might have just been her resting face, but her default expression broadcasted to the entire world that she was totally unhappy and completely uninterested in whoever was interacting with her. Just step into the shoes of the person trying to talk to Stacy for a second. When you're speaking to someone who looks entirely unhappy and uninterested, your internal monologue immediately goes to, is what I'm saying boring? Is she even listening to me right now? Should I just leave? By having that bad body language, Stacy was forcing the person in front of her to feel uninteresting and unwanted. And remember that golden rule? If you make people feel bad, even accidentally through a glazed-over look, they are going to instinctively try to avoid you in the future. Nobody wants to talk to a brick wall that makes them feel boring. Then there was mistake number 2, making absolutely everything about herself. The source material shares this incredibly revealing anecdote about this exact thing. Imagine you're sharing a deeply personal story with an acquaintance, right? A time you hit absolute rock bottom. You're opening up, you're being vulnerable, sharing a painful struggle you almost never tell anyone. And boom, Stacy butts in. She interrupts your heartfelt story, not to offer support, but to start talking about her own struggles in high school. She's essentially bragging about how her rock bottom was way worse than yours. This just brilliantly illustrates the selfish mechanics of conversational hijacking. First, you're essentially telling the other person, hey, I do not care about you, and I do not care about your story. Ouch, that is a terrible feeling to inflict on someone. Then you demand they listen to your story to make you feel good. It's basically an emotional stick-up. The vast majority of people love talking about themselves because it feels really good to be listened to. But when you constantly redirect the conversation back to yourself, you're demanding emotional labor from everyone else without giving a single ounce of it back in return. This conversational robbery was likely the biggest reason Stacy just couldn't hold on to a relationship. Which leads us right to mistake number 3, the negativity cloud. We all know someone exactly like this, right? There are thousands of different things you can talk about when you hang out with someone, but Stacy always gravitated toward the negative. She constantly complained. She'd talk about her past, how she used to be skinnier, how she used to have nicer hair. If you went out to eat with her, she'd complain about the food, she'd complain about the service. She was just super critical of absolutely everything around her. This actually builds into this fascinating psychological concept known as emotional contagion. When you talk about something negative, you aren't just sharing words, you are literally transferring emotions. If you tell a story about how your dog died, the person listening is going to feel your sadness. If you vent about a cheating partner, the listener is going to feel your anger or disgust. Now, obviously, there's absolutely a time and a place for deep, heavy stories in a close friendship, but if you do this constantly, especially when you're just getting to know someone, you're forcing them to feel negative emotions. They'll start to subconsciously associate you with those bad feelings, and according to our golden rule, they will avoid you for sure. Okay, so let's bring it all back to the foundational math of making friends. The basic friendship formula includes 4 main pillars: proximity, frequency, duration, and intensity. And here is the truly wild part. Stacy actually did these 4 things right. She would go out partying with people quite often. So she had great proximity, she saw them frequently, they hung out for long durations, and the party environments had high intensity. On paper, she was doing the math perfectly. And this brings us to the massive, kind of mind-blowing conclusion of our source material. The friendship formula isn't a standalone equation. It's actually multiplied by the golden rule. Think of the golden rule as this giant positive or negative sign sitting right in front of all your social effort. If you make people feel good, that effort multiplies into a huge positive, and your friendships grow. But because Stacy constantly broke the rule, through her bad body language, her selfishness, and that negativity cloud, her golden rule multiplier was a massive negative. So all that time partying and hanging out, it just meant she was efficiently multiplying the number of people who hated her. Her high effort literally resulted in making enemies, simply because she forced people to feel bad, frequently and intensely. So, we've officially solved the mystery of Stacy and seeing the massive impact of the golden rule. But listen, this is really just the foundation. Once you've stopped making people feel bad, how do you actively accelerate making them feel good? Well, the source material teases an incredibly powerful concept that can multiply the speed at which you befriend others by 2 times, 3 times, or even 5 times. Which leaves us with this final, absolutely vital question to ponder. What happens to your friendships when you introduce the concept of value? We've completely mastered the baseline rules of emotional connection today, but understanding value is what will truly supercharge your social skills next. Keep this question in your mind, try applying the golden rule in your interactions today, and keep learning. Because I promise you, mastering these structural social skills changes absolutely everything.